every once in a while, I get to string a racket. Not all the time, but I do try to keep myself entertained with my own thoughts. And one particular short thought that I've been thinking about a while is kind of reflecting on my experience as both a coach and a student. Growing up, playing tournaments, and then eventually helping others play tournaments. Trying to learn from my instructor that transition between how to be a good student to eventually how to be a good teacher, and then go back to how to be a good student, and then back into how to be a good teacher. And it takes some time, but one particular thing looking back was what made my coach someone I really liked, what made my coach someone I really thought of as a great coach, and what made myself someone that I suppose I guess he considered a good student, more or less. I guess what kind of gave him the patience to deal with me, and kind of what I find I like when I'm teaching someone. And looking back, I'd say, to keep it simple, more or less about, I can say 3 things that I notice from my coach, especially comparing to others that I felt weren't, good for me. That caused me to reflect. Especially one thing, a common thing I see is kind of that parent-coach dynamic where the parent tries to be the coach, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. Kind of like not like backseat driving, but courtside coaching. So like while the coach is trying to do something, the parent's trying to do the same thing, but from the sidelines, and it doesn't quite work out. But that's a whole other topic in and of itself. But the 3 qualities I noticed that, looking back, helped me with my coach was, well, one, you want a coach to be knowledgeable. You want the coach to teach you something. The coach has to kind of know what they're talking about in order for them to teach you. You can't teach someone something you yourself do not know. And you can't really pull off the being one chapter ahead in the textbook when it deals with teaching someone something. You have to have be enough chapters ahead to anticipate the questions, to anticipate kind of the difficulty a person might have in grasping a concept. And looking back, the things that I find myself, best at in my game are very much similar to what my coach was most knowledgeable in. My coach was a serve and volley with one-handed backhand. I myself was baseline grinder for at the start, but the things that I consider myself most competent these days are my serve and my volleys. And the ground strokes kind of took a little bit later, because I guess that wasn't necessarily my coach's it wasn't the thing he could relate to me the most with. He used a continental grip. I used a semi-western grip, effectively. One-handed backhand, two-handed backhand. But nonetheless, with regards to what he was teaching me, he knew what he was doing, and that's kind of one thing you want to have in a coach. You want a coach who knows what they're doing effectively. Otherwise, you're not going to really learn much. An example of a coach that doesn't necessarily need to really be knowledgeable per se is like a Pee-wee coach. Or like when you're coaching Pee-wees, your knowledge isn't necessarily the thing that makes this the little kids 3, 4, 5 years old have the most get the most out of it. You could say it's the second quality, which is encouragement. So the coach has to be knowledgeable, and to some degree the coach has to be encouraging, has to make it fun. The encouraging part is something that oftentimes those who kind of coach from the sidelines, they kind of miss out on sometimes. Um, you know, as an example, I'll see. I've dealt with parents where I work with their kid on something, and then right after the lesson, the parents come up and try to basically like reinforce that lesson, but they're doing it with a less encouraging tone, mind you could say, or what I would consider harsh or really lacking, emotional connection. So the person will nod their head and whatnot, but you can tell that they're just trying to like go through it because that experience is no longer fun for them. It's now something. It's now like a chore to have to like sit through and say okay yeah. And this happens more with like competition really. When say a parent has a competitional aspirations for their kid, and so they try to cheer on, but you can tell it's they come across as a little pushy sometimes, and there's a fine line between pushing someone to try harder and whatnot, and just kind of getting them to recede in themselves, and ultimately again like it takes a certain kind of insanity to be able to have fun in environments that you wouldn't consider so fun. Again, when you're really trying to say push yourself with your exercise, with your fitness and whatnot, running, 5 miles for a warm up, followed by sprints, followed by a little bit of tennis, and followed by a short lunge, by more sprints, more fitness. Like some of that can get a little taxing on the body, but if it's fun at the end of the day, a person will go through a lot if they find something fun. So the more you can make something fun, even if it's not easy, it works. A coach who can make a player always feel like they're having fun on the court, even in a really intense session, that's a big deal. And that's kind of what what made a lot of things worth it for me back in the day. Running around and having more or less no social life. At the end of the day, I had enough fun on the court to not need a social life. So I could embrace my social awkwardness and whatnot. So again, so a coach being knowledgeable, then he teaches something. A coach being encouraging. That way you can sustain yourself when you're trying to break into new plateaus. Having fun, which just keeps you going back. And the third thing, which I could deal with someone not necessarily being too knowledgeable. If they're just teaching me something really basic that I already know, that's fine. If it's fun, yeah, I can deal with not having fun per se. But the thing that I'd say ties it all together is investment. And what I mean by investment is that the coach cares. The coach cares about your improvement. The coach cares about how you're doing. Oh, I did not need to do all this. I could have went ahead of myself here. Let me backtrack a little bit here to have enough string to pull on. That's good enough. The way I would describe it is, say you show up, you're trying to practice, the coach is teaching you some things that make sense, that are supposed to work, making it fun, you're enjoying yourself. But at the end of the day, if it matters not to the coach, whether your game progresses or not. I mean, some people, if they don't have any aspiration to progress their game past a certain point, that's everyone has their own goals, has their own things they want to get out of tennis. But say if you want to get better, and the coach doesn't necessarily show interest in whether or not you get better, that's a huge turnoff for me. That's ultimately what can kind of make or break whether you get something out of your tennis altogether. Like as an example, a while back in my, maybe I'd say mid-teens, I was maybe 15, maybe 16. I joined this high performance junior thingy going on at a club in New York. It was like, I think it was like once a week, just a bunch of juniors, I would say, were more or less better than me, were on track to be better than me. We're training all together under the tutelage of some coaches who were that worked with D1 Division 1 tennis players and whatnot. And I remember I had a really not really good session. Like I was nothing was really working, just feeling off and whatnot. And at the end, the coach said, "Oh, good job out there," and kind of like left it at that. And I could tell that that what kind of snapped in my head was this: you could really care less whether or not I'm doing well today, or I'm progressing in my tennis and everything. And it kind of made took everything out of all the motivation out for practicing with that group. It was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not one of the regulars or whatnot. So at the end of the day, if I get better, don't get better, as long as I parents pay and I show up, that's more or less like enough for them on their end. And you can think of it as like, if the coach doesn't, coaches will have, say, like their favorite student, or if you're in a high performance team, they'll have like the people that they kind of like have the most, will assume that are, will kind of like be the best player out of the group, and so they'll kind of like, give them attention. When someone's like giving someone extra attention, you can tell that's because they have a little bit of some sort of investment in them, so to speak. And that's, sometimes that's just how it is. But at the end of the day, regardless of your scope, how much you pound, how often you're training, how often or where you want to take your tennis down the road, having a coach that I guess cares, so to speak, or I guess, and then the word investment is kind of like good enough to use, I suppose, without any other description. If they're invested in you, if you can tell that, oh, this person is not just teaching me things, not just making it fun, but is kind of keeping an eye out to make sure that I'm getting something out of this. Say I want to be able to go from the beginner class to intermediate class, or I want to make my high school team, or if I want to start winning my corporate league matches, or even just like your normal like league, casual ladder matches. If there is that, if when you have the feeling that this, that the coach is not constant, but like that they're always reevaluating how can they, help you achieve your goal, and even go beyond it in case, if you want to make your high school team, you might as well prepare the person to be able to make their college team. Worst case scenario, they're happy with where they are, but they end up having extra fun because they have some extra skills that they could use to do extra things with. And best case scenario, they if their aspirations grow, oh well, what, I had so much fun doing this, I feel like I might as well or I feel like I want to try to see how far I can go up the ladder. You're at least getting themselves, you're preparing them for that next step if they so want to take it. The way my coach, he had this talk with all of us once, and he said, wherever you want to go, whether you want to just play high school, you want to just play college, or you want to play on the professional circuit, blah blah. I'm going to teach you all you need to know. You get off the train whenever you want. But he's gonna basically give us the best possible, prepare us in the best possible manner, make our chances, highest level that we're willing to go with. So yeah, that really made the difference. Knowing to the point where, again, my coach in particular, he always wanted to see me do my best. Not even on the tennis court, to be honest. Like, at least with my coach back in the day, he was invested in my life. He wanted to make sure that not only was I getting tennis knowledge, or I was improving as a tennis player, but leveraging my time on court to improve as a person. Whether it be making sure my relationship with my parents was as good as possible, even through the clashes of the stress of junior tournament play, everyone goes through that without, no one really goes through that tournament play without having some sort of, I don't know, I guess you can call it emotional trauma, or some sort of insanity that comes with it. Let's see, does this work here? Boom. Nice. Yeah, stringing is not it's therapeutic sometimes, so it's good to have a little bit of fun with it. And looking at kind of like this, other coaches I've worked with in the past, you can tell some coaches kind of were experts in one particular aspect of it. So, like, for example, there are coaches that they specialize in making things fun. Say again, if a particular class or player doesn't necessarily want to, they don't really care about instruction. They don't really have any aspirations or anything beyond just having fun on court. Then that's something that's one of the things that you have to pull out sometimes. Just have fun. An example for me as a coach myself is some people, for hitting lessons, for example, they don't really they don't need me to teach them anything. They just want me on there to help them run around and just get a sweat in, and just enjoy, have a good time, basically get a good hit in. So the way I work with them, I get a little goofy with how I hit my shots, but I make sure that their priority is they want to run around and have fun. Then they run around and have fun. Some people will have a particular need to improve a certain part of their game, so they want specific knowledge on how do I fix my toss, or how do I fix my serve, and they're willing to kind of not hit for 5-10 minutes, just to go over like the mechanics or the motion and whatnot. And so again, that's kind of their thing. And then some people, they just want to they want it all. They want to conquer the world, and they want someone who could help them build their rocket ship. And so they sometimes just have to help someone build a rocket ship and whatnot. And going over my experiences, I started off as a person who was very, very technical. So I was super into the knowledge part. Oh, I'm going to teach you the specific details of this technique, how to hit a forehand, how to hit a backhand, blah blah. And I got feedback that I was kind of making things a little boring. Like my lessons were more or less boring, where I was just kind of turning into a physics lesson, because I would spend 15 minutes going over how between the angle of the racket, the angle of the wrist, this part, this muscle, that muscle, and took that to heart, and it was like, okay, being super knowledgeable is not doesn't really help if it's not fun. The person's not having fun. So to kind of incorporate that feedback, I try to simplify my instruction to like 1 or 2 words or phrases. So these days it's measure and turn. Measure means using your feet to get yourself in position a specific distance away from the ball, And then turn is just turn your body to hit the ball. Keep your arm relaxed, turn your body, boom. And I try to we'll expand on that. Expand on that, as needed, but for the most part, try to keep my instruction for the most part as simple as possible, so I can focus on kind of the activities that to facilitate that, and can focus on making things again a little more enjoyable. So games, drills, get people to be playing tennis, but trying to give them just one or two things to think about, so they're not too crazy. They're not kind of getting overwhelmed with all this information, which tennis is one of those sports where there's a certain kind of thinking you have to do, and does not involve too many decisions. You don't want to be thinking. You don't want to be thinking about what part of the body you have to move and control. You want that to be automatic at some point. So you keep promotion as simple as possible. That way, there's less processing power you're dedicating to how to swing, and then you can start focusing your mind on other stuff. That's the enjoyment of it. String. These are this Wilson racket fun. And yeah, I mean that's from a coaching side. That's kind of like more or less three things that come into mind as what made a coach for me stand out and what I try to do to stand out. The investment part is, at least for me, anyone I'm working with, I try to keep my eyes open. I don't like to be at the end of the day or end of the season that the only thing people really got out of my lessons were some laughs and a good sweat, and maybe they learned something they could write down on paper about how to improve. It's good to see someone improve and make tangible improvements, and I try not to let I guess, what do you call it, either leave people hanging or leave someone behind or whatnot when it comes to tennis. If you're working with me, I want to see you improve, and if it means putting in some extra time, then so be it. I want to offer value beyond just I hit a ball to you a few times and you had a laugh and whatnot. And ultimately, again, like regardless of even a person's aspirations, people, what I've noticed, at least for myself, is I have a lot more fun when the better I get. The better I get at tennis, the more fun I open myself to having. And so, even if a person just wants to have fun, I still want to at least keep some sort of continuation of progress. I want to see that that person is improving. They're getting something out of it, and I'm not just there for the heck of it. And from a student side, it's kind of like the same three things, right? If a person if a person wants to learn, from a coach's perspective, it makes the lesson a lot easier to deal with. A person who just wants to learn about something. That's kind of what made I guess that's what made my coach deal with me at the beginning. Was I would bug him after every class. I would go like once a week or something like that, or once or twice a week to the club, and I'd always bug him after my classes for advice, to the point where he was like, you know what, if you want to come in for the class before, just come early, take an extra class, just because I know I can tell you want to you want to learn something. And so I would come a little bit early and join the class before my own class, and then a person who enjoys being on court. from a coach's, from at least from my perspective as a coach, and I suppose that was what helped me with my coach, was when the person's having fun on court in the lesson. Again, it makes it, as a coach, it really motivates me to give it my all to help this person. And it kind of ties into the third point, to invest it. If a person ultimately they want to get something out of it, they want to improve, especially from those who again they want to, I guess kind of get they have something with competition. Say, okay, I want to get better because I want to do such and such thing with tournaments or whatever. Even if it's just something casual, it's when someone when someone wants to achieve a goal, when someone has a goal, or rather, that's like an investment, really. Self-investment is when you have a goal for yourself. It makes coaching a lot easier for me to really give a nice effort when there's a goal that the player wants to achieve. So again, their motivation for a goal kind of feeds into my motivation to teach and whatnot. And yeah, that's more or less almost done with this thing. Oh, that's pretty crazy. I got two more of these things left. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so in summary, when it comes to that dynamic between player and coach, having someone, one or both parties who knowledgeable, wants to learn, encouraging, having fun on court, and invested, wanting to it's not just simple, not that they're just to give a lesson, they're there to what do you call it, get you to improve. I guess the investment again is really one of the most important things. You can think of it as if you're buying a car from someone. They can sell you the car, and okay, you bought a car, good luck. Versus say they sell you a car and then they're checking up on you, helping you take driving lessons. Say you buy a stick shift, they want to make sure you know how to use it as well. They want to see you getting the most out of your experience. Again, and as a sale, so I know that's the thing with like sales, for example. Someone who wants to see that you're getting the most out of your purchase or whatever. It's a big deal. But when it comes to a service, say you get a haircut and the person calls you a week later. Okay, how's the haircut looking? Is it all growing in the right spots for you? Blah blah, stuff like that. Really, again, the investment is makes or breaks the tennis experience for me. The knowledge, when a person's invested, it motivates you to learn, and you end up having fun. So you kind of take care of those first two. As long as the coach, again, knows what they're doing, which for the most, most coaches coaches for the most part, they do know what they're doing, especially if they have some sort of credential to deal with, if they played or whatever. And then having fun sometimes can take a little bit of fine tuning. Okay, what kind of drills? What are an assortment of drills that are good to have, how to structure a class so people are fairly engaged. That's all that stuff comes with experience. But the investment, that's an intangible. It's a personal choice to again, you're there to teach someone. I'm not just there to teach something. I'm there to make sure that you're learning something. See, there's a difference, right? I can make sure you're having fun. I can make sure I'm teaching something. But there's a difference between teaching something and someone learning, right? When a person's paying you to teach them tennis, what they're paying you is to teach them, right? But what they want to get out of it is to learn. sometimes it's easy to teach someone and they don't learn. So it's not enough to, know what I'm doing to teach people. I try to, I want to make sure that the learning is happening, right? It's the transaction is, okay, I'm getting some sort of monetary compensation, and what I'm giving out is instruction. But it's the instruction versus knowledge. It's a different thing. I want to make sure that you're getting knowledge out of this. I want to make sure that you're improving at it. So I want to make sure that something is happening beyond just, I'm teaching how to hit a ball, you're having a fun time, and then, we all move on with our lives. Now let's see here. What string am I supposed to tie this sucker off at? 5 head, 6 throat. So if I count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, nice. Right here. Wow, yeah, it's really convenient. Not much to worry about here. But yeah, hopefully that made sense. My ramblings and whatnot. It's almost midnight. Beautiful. Gonna have a fun time in the morning. But, at least I got a record strung out of it. Alright. Any questions, comments, concerns, grievances, suggestions? You know where to find me.